A very layered spread with a super bright and cute theme is what we are creating in today's video. The first to be delivered all the way to the Netherlands. This was actually our second of the 12 in the Circle Journal we are participating in. Welcome to PM Artist Studio. I am Marije, the M in PM. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Now let's get started. Welcome again, and thank you for joining us. The goal with this spread was to create something bright and cute. So I pulled out all of the bright papers that I could find, and that's always a good start. Or I feel like that's certainly where I like to start, is with the papers. And then from there, kind of work in the media. One of the things you see me working with there are the Mr. Huey's color sprays. Unfortunately, they are very hard to find, and I don't think that they are made any longer, but something comparable would be like a Lindsay's spray or even some of the Ranger Inks products would also work. Anything that you can kind of color the page with. I love a lot of these. In fact, there is one of the Distress Ink sprays. Those work very well and do really interesting things when you spray the Mr. Huey's on top of it. You get that water kind of drippy effect, which I think that's how they were meant to be used. Again, pulling out more papers, lots and lots of little papers. Some I use and some I don't. I did, in fact, as you saw in the intro, use one of these petal pocket. And you can find these in our set of papers available on Etsy. If you're interested, I will drop a link below. And this is one of our new sets. I think I have petal pockets in both of the new purple papers available. So I'll put both of the links below and you can kind of look at them and see which set you like better. Or buy them both, that would be really awesome. But this is how the petal pocket was meant to be used. I just didn't know if I wanted to use a lot more of our original art, or you can see I'm so in love with this blotter cloth and kind of off spray. I know that sounds so crazy, but those of you that are really into this sort of thing know that that really isn't that crazy, and we keep these sorts of things. So if you're new to art journaling, this is the type of stuff you will start keeping. And if you aren't so new, you totally get it. And you can tell that some of the blotter cloth was actually created with some of the stenciling. And then I tried to create some other pieces. I ended up, I believe, only using the blotter cloth or the off spray. And I have this now kept. You'll probably see this in something else someday, because it just went back in the file of the cute and bright papers. So that's one thing a lot of people ask about, I see online, is how people store, how everyone is storing their papers and things of that nature. When I create something like this and then all of a sudden I don't necessarily use it, I put it all back in the pack of papers that I used for that particular journal, or in this case it was kind of a journal spread. So that way I can kind of reference back that those were the type of papers that I used in that project, and usually they have very similar colors or certainly a theme. Seems to work for me. And I keep them in Ziploc bags so you can see the papers. Actually, a lot of these are ending up in the packages that we end up getting in the mail. They work well too, the bubble wrap or the bubble envelopes. Now this is also this is one of the pattern papers, again from those purple sets that we now have available. This is the lace, and if you have seen our stuff before, you'll know that this is one of the patterns we love to use and keep just changing the colors and bringing those into each set. And if you don't know why, one of the reasons is that it's really cool to be able to use many of our sets together. That's why I keep those really good patterns. And repetition is a huge thing, so I'm going to keep repeating that repetition, repeating. That It is extremely important. And that is why you see me here, making sure that I have that particular pattern, those little strips, repeated from one page to the next. And almost in a similar pattern itself. Because it keeps your eye moving and it makes the design feel cohesive. Repetition will always create a cohesive feel to a design. So the blotter cloth, you saw at one point I actually tore it apart because one of the things you don't want to do is with paper towels, it's 2-ply. So you want to remove the back part, which sometimes is great because if it's gone all the way through, it's like you have 2 parts that you can use. Because you don't want to glue it down and then all of a sudden it starts peeling up. So that is a little tip and trick when using paper towels or anything that is 2-ply. I guess that would apply to toilet paper as well. Anyway, so now I'm kind of working out the pocket again in that little section. I know that I'm going to use at least one of those petal pockets at that moment in time. So I'm getting prepped this area. This is archival tissue paper. It's really, really cool stuff to work with. Delicate, but if you can kind of work it just right, I was able to create this ruched. And those of you that are sewers, seamstresses, would understand that terminology, or if you just kind of are into clothing, that ruching of the paper made a really interesting texture to that area. And you can kind of see the background coming through it, and then you saw that I used a little bit of the color spray dabbed onto some of the sponges in order to bring more of the color through a bit and add again just more layers, more interest, and more repetition. Repetition. That little spot was extremely tricky to work with in order to keep the ruching and also make the pocket feel like it was coming out of the textured area. And it took me, I know that you're seeing it go very quickly here, but that was a lot of work, and I think I even cut out some of it because it just was a bit of work. It's nice to have little tools like that. Pokey tool, it's actually a clay tool. Scissors I use a lot to hold down things like either threads or the paper. And there you see, I'm still trying to work out how that pocket is now gonna work, or what's gonna go in it. I almost thought I was gonna do like a double version, or a pocket inside of a pocket. But that didn't really, once I had the little ruched area in place, that made less sense. And I'm kind of using this is gonna be one of those, I believe, very PM kind of techniques. I like it, and so you'll be seeing this more often, I think. I've already used it now in 2 spreads. So as I had said, that this is actually the second in what we have shipped out, because we were all assigned a number, and then you kind of go down the list and mail out in order. But the very first one has not arrived, so this will actually be the first video up, even though it was the second journal spread we did. And if you have watched any of the other boho journals, you had seen that yarn before. I really wanted to work it in here, but the colors didn't quite make sense. I could have split it apart and used more of the purple, but it seemed that it was just so delicate and beautiful on the end. I didn't want to cover any of it up with the wispy furry bits. Now I'm coming in with alcohol ink marker. They are really, really great to sort of touch up and bring some of that color from the background back up once it was covered up with some of those torn edges. This I didn't actually end up using, which were the little, kind of, the spiral bits. thought kind of it was gonna be like a confetti sort of thing, or I don't know. I wanted to use those, and hopefully you guys watching will see that so many times I create little things that don't actually end up in the journal, or what I had anticipated being one thing turns into another. So again, so many times things look, cool, or you have this thought, maybe it just doesn't work out so well. It all ends up being used at some point in time anyway. And, it's just how it all works. If you're feeling inspired by this video, please do, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We love doing these, and having you come back and watch our videos makes us very happy. Now, this was a piece that I kind of reworked and worked, and I wanted to include some of this metallic paper, which is so much fun to work with, but has its own little quirks. One of which is, depending on the color, which this particular one is purple, some of them take inks better than others. I have noticed that. They are meant for offset printing, really, but some of them do actually work pretty decently in an inkjet printer, and then also for mixed media purposes. But something, do keep in mind that depending on the color, I think I'm not really sure exactly why that is, but I'm sure, like mixed in, that's why certain ones do better with other colors or certain media. And when you do use them in inkjet, or with being printed, a good idea is to then come back either with like a distress glaze or something similar to just finish it, because the inks will rub off after some time. So now I'm just coming in with my very favorite new markers, the Chocola acrylic markers. I mean, for the price point, really, you just can't beat them. I mean, they are not exactly like Posca's, but they are similar enough in the fact that they are very opaque, or certain ones are more opaque than others. But loving them, and really highly recommend them. And they come in 40 different colors. Can't beat that. So as I was saying before about the types of inks and see how it's taking to the paper, I really had to kind of buff that in, and then it did kind of bleed into the paper. But again, when using the metallic papers, things get interesting. Now, going back to repetition. The spread needed to have now that new layer of some of the similar stenciling and colors brought back up on top of it, so that the bottom layers started to kind of mesh with what was already happening in the whole spread. Because as you're piecing things together, you now have to figure out, or certainly my goal is, to combine them all. And repetition is one of those ways to do it. Now, you saw I'm trying to repeat the little ruching over there in the corner, but it just didn't feel right and there wasn't enough of it that it stood out, and it felt awkward over there. Nice thing was, it was pretty easy to remove, and then I decided what it really needed was more of the blotter paper or paper towel, and bringing in more of that turquoisey teal color. And you can now begin to see the flow coming. And as with any of our favorite projects, we always drop a nice little PM logo in, and that's what I'm trying to do, fighting with because I printed them out on label paper, made them into little stickers, which give me a little bit of trouble. I didn't show on camera me embossing this, and the funny thing is it's one of the pieces that my daughter has painted, and she likes to just paint a piece of paper and then leave them about, and I was like, hey, those are perfect for my colors. So she did not mind me using those, and I ran it through the embossing with the folder. And this is one of my favorite ones because it has such cool little designs, and one of my favorite things to do is then cut out and piece it together in different areas. So again, creating repetition and also texture. I think that's one of the things about the blotter paper towel, or kitchen towel as some call it, is the texture on them, and some of them have different textures, which makes it fun. They're great for collage. They really are. And not only bringing repetition across the spread, I wanted to then make the insert, the little pocket tuck, have some of that embossing as well. Coming along in with the, I think those are American Crafts, just chalk markers or chalk-like markers, because they do dry, they don't rub off. Like, I do have some chalk markers that will like rub off, but I love those. They blend so well, and the colors are cool because they're nice kind of pastel colors. Now I have my little tuck. So I did actually use 2 of the petals, but one as a little tuck card and the other as actually a pocket, as you see there. And now you can really see in this view how well the different pieces from the embossing folder or the embossed page kind of bring it all together. Still needing a couple more there, figuring out where one would really work itself in. And one of the tricks that I have kind of found out with the embossing folder is, or the embossed papers, is if you get the right amount of glue in there and just let it be, it helps hold the texture or the embossed image. So a little FYI on that. And that is one of the reasons art glitter glue is really fantastic, because it does dry pretty quickly. And I was kind of worried that since these would be shipped, that they're going to be flat for a while. And I was kind of, I hope that everything kind of stayed or held together. And the glue definitely will help do that with the embossing. Now just trimming off some of those edges. The other thing I didn't think about at the time was the ruffly bits and how I was going to fit that into the envelope. I ended up folding those in, and then I believe they did fluff out pretty nicely as it arrived. I stuck one little swirly stickers, had some glitter stuff there in the middle, glued that down. Now just creating another sort of repetitive element with how the edge of the paper, the ruched bit, is kind of fringe-like. I wanted that to be brought in to the pocket, because a lot of times I stray away from like a straight cut edge, especially when I'm doing this type of thing. I want it all to feel very like it was just ripped out of a page, or that it wore away kind of naturally. And things typically aren't going to wear away in a straight line. Now you can see obviously with one of the little tucks there, it is very straight, but still has curved edges. And now what I did is the one part that I liked off of it was the gilded edge. So I tore that little bit off and glued it down to the little ruffly bit to then again repeat a bit of ruffle like what is at the edge of the paper. Now we're getting really, really close. One of the things I almost always do is come back in. If you've watched any of our other videos, I come back in and touch up any of those torn edges, again, making them meld into the page versus just having a very stark white torn edge. One of the other bits that I just did there was to bring the Coliro watercolors, and that was again another repetition of that little bit right there on the pocket, along with the centers of the lace pattern, and then the edges of the ruffle. So then you have 3 areas that your eye's moving around and keeping the design in that nice, cohesive, repetition of color, texture, and elements. Signing my name. And then decided, well, it's still just, some of those pink areas were just a bit too stark and needed softening up. And one of the ways to soften it up and to create repetition was, again, to bring over more of the ruching ruffle pieces. So I will also put a link below to this archival tissue paper. I mean, any tissue paper really would work, but this stuff was really, really nice. And what I did prior to gluing it down, and you saw that in the very beginning, probably very quickly, was I sprayed it with a little bit of the sparkle spray. And I think, again, like a Lindsay's would work. The one I have is a Mr. Huey's that I cannot find any longer, which makes me very sad. Blotting back in with the little bits of color, same color. That paper, it takes it so well. It was just, it made me so happy, the tissue paper. And there you have it. Here is the final. Have it in the light box so you get all the great lighting. Little sticker. And see that texture? Oh, it just makes me so happy. Made me a little sad seeing shipping these off, but I think they're going to good homes, and I really do hope that they are loved as much as I loved making them. Thank you guys for watching. As always, really appreciate it. If you haven't, please do like this video. Leave us a comment. Love those. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and ring that bell. We do this each week and would love to see you back. Thank you again for watching. Bye!